hey, it's Ted Schmidt, doing another Brewster podcast here. This is the Johnson Free Agency Wrap-Up, and with me I have Stephen Lane of Long Beach and Randy Weigand of San Fernando, of course, because it's a podcast and it's me and Randy. Hi, guys.
This is where the Frick League Pacific tells everybody else how to do free agency.
Right, yep, because since we have three Frick League GMs, we figured we'd talk about the Johnson League, because that makes all kinds of sense.
There's no one better than the best division in baseball to talk about free agency.
You know,
especially when two of the three teams really don't ever do anything in free agency.
Yeah, right. Like I think I
signed enough players for the three of us.
Yeah, right. I'm glad you're here because you actually sign players. Yeah, I do the trade review ones where, I'm the guy that doesn't trade, and I do the free agency review, and I'm the guy that doesn't spend in free agency. So it's a little bit silly. Although I did this year. Okay. So, did you guys have any, big overarching thoughts on this free agency group?
I didn't look at the Frick, but in the Johnson, there were a lot of pretty reasonable signings, I thought. I don't think there were no, holy cow, this is a great deal for the team, but also didn't really see any what in the world is this guy doing sort of deals, which is, for free agency standards, when everybody always gets overpaid, that's not bad. Good for us.
Yeah. Steven, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was another good class, a lot of good talent, even with some pre-free agency extensions that took a couple guys out. I still thought it was a good, fun class.
Any weak spots? I didn't see a whole lot. If you needed a center fielder, I didn't see a whole lot there. But otherwise, I thought it had options at a good number of positions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, center field and shortstop are always going to be thin, but
even the shortstop this year, there were a few. You had Compton and Flores out there who they're not going to be superstars, but they're better than what usually hits the market at free agency at shortstop.
Yeah,
it's true.
No, I agree. Okay, well, yeah, I think those are kind of the thoughts I had. Regarding the lack of overpays, I really do wonder how much of that is just due to the I don't know. I feel like there's been these big shifts in the free agent asking prices, and then some people, when I mention that, seem to think that I'm overblowing what are more minor shifts. I don't know. I realize I'm someone who tends to kind of blow things out of proportion at times. But I wonder how much of the more reasonable deals this year were due to the fact that we were starting at reasonable demands and then bidding up based upon demand, as opposed to people just having to be patient waiting for the demands to get reasonable. I don't know. Do you guys think that was different at all? Am I seeing something that wasn't there? Or
that's a possibility. One thing I noticed too is it seems like we got a lot of the guys signed before spring training this year, whereas in years past there's always seemingly been a big name or two that gets signed in the middle of spring training. Who's the biggest name left? Hotha Popo, probably.
Yeah.
Karlamov.
Maybe Karlamov. No, this is pretty good. You're right. This is a little bit better.
And the one thing I noticed, because there were a few of these signings in the Johnson, nobody is paying backup catchers $3 and $4 million anymore, which is good. Because there's no reason you should pay a backup catcher $4 million.
I'm still of the mind that you shouldn't pay a backup catcher at all. I feel like that should be a draft strategy issue. Always make sure you've got somebody who can
I'd rather
defend.
Yeah, if you're going to dip into free agency, though, there were a couple signings where it was $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.5 million, and those are what you should be paying.
Right.
30-year-old journeyman backup catchers.
No, that's true. That's true. Okay, Steven, you're going to have to yell over Randy, otherwise he's just gonna answer all the questions. You're going to be there quietly.
Okay.
Quietly.
I'm not used to being a 3-man pod. I'm sorry. I'm used to hearing Ted ask a question and then answer it.
Well, you would be the first to answer, even if you knew it was a 3-man pod. Come on now.
Yeah, that's probably
you do have opinions.
I'm drinking. Give me a break. It's 7:45 at night here on a Friday.
Yeah, that's the other reason I'm a little rough, is I was kind of drunk when I was talking to you at 5 a.m. and when I went to bed. So, I'm going to take a nap after this is what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to do the other podcast. Okay, so let's.
So you need to prepare.
I haven't even prepared for the other one. I'm going to go to sleep, get up, prepare for the next one, and do it. Okay, so be okay if we just go alphabetical order through this noise?
That's how I got mine.
Wait, not
Sounds
alphabetical.
good.
I was going to do division and alphabetical within division. Can we do that instead?
Sure.
That's too.
Okay. So JLA, Atlantic City, they signed Andres. How do you say Andre with an S? Georges.
I don't. Does it have an S? I thought it was just Andre.
Oh, it is. There's an Andres somewhere. Maybe I have one of those. I don't know. Who knows?
No, Phoenix has Andres Martinez as their catcher.
Maybe that's it. Starting off with the bang, getting the names wrong. Victor Guerra, Luis Flores, and Alan McHugh.
And Raul Ortiz. Don't forget.
I just started leaving off. Oh, I didn't tell you this. I'm not going to talk about guys making like relievers and backup players and making no money. I'm just not even talking about them this year. They didn't even make the list. I don't care. I don't think anyone else does. Like every year, I feel like you and I were saying like, oh, look at that, snagged that reliever for like, $900K, which is $100K under market value. Like, who cares? Like, shit like that guy never matters at all. He should stop. Just
and then they pitch like 20 innings during the
right,
year.
exactly. Like, dude, you get better at this. Steven, what are your thoughts on this batch of new, not mobsters, which is what my note says, because I cannot get out of BBA.
Gamblers,
right?
new gamblers.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty good. Pretty good set at some good prices. Georges, however we're pronouncing that today, is a pretty good value. I think he's not a frontline starter, but he's not being paid like that either. Well, at least if you look at the whole contract. And Victor Guerra's probably got a couple of good years left in him, so can't knock that one.
As somebody who had Victor Guerra, what has he done to warrant that much control over his contract? He has both an opt-out and a player option, and I'm not quite sure his past performance, even at reasonable value, which I mean, averaging just under $5 million a year. I don't know why he deserves to have all the control. I usually would think that would be for somebody who's been a good performer over his recent past, whereas Guerra's kind of been a turd.
I think I'm largely with you, but it's the control issue. As far as the price, he really was an okay-ish hitter in Des Moines last year, and he's still a decent defender. And Atlantic City needed a right-handed outfield bat. They've got 3 left-handers projecting as their starters. So if he ends up with, say, 350 plate appearances and puts up his typical, and he's been able to do it recently. Puts up his, last year he was an 832 OPS against left-handed pitching. We're just going to ignore when he was with you.
I like Guerra's the numbers on the contract. I just have issue with the length and the control that he has.
Well, I wonder, do you think that's like a player option that he expects him to pick up? Like is that like a sneaky like chance to get out of this deal sort of thing?
Well, but he's also got the opt out. He's also got the opt out in there.
No, I'm sorry. I meant the opt out, not the player option. Like, is the opt out like a? Okay. If he plays well, I can get out of this deal.
I don't know. I'm anti opt out. I don't think I've ever offered one to a player, nor do I ever plan to. So I'll defer to Steven on that one because I just don't believe in opt outs in contracts from a business point of view.
Yeah, I don't. It's probably I can't really say why he's put it in there. I think I agree with Randy. Guerra's not really the type of player that you would think you would want to attach these kind of things to, but I don't really think it's that substantial.
You mentioned you like the value on Georges. I'm not sure I do. If you look at he looks like he should be talented enough to be kind of a 4th starter, and that's a fine price for a free agent 4th starter. I have no qualms about that. And at times in the past, he has been that. But when you look at his FIPS, honestly, it was just last year. It's just last year, and I'm getting confused by the way the stats are spread out. So, maybe this is actually fine. If he pitches like the guy from, he is a little older, so that is something to take into consideration. He's right around that magic, this could be real, he could suck now age. But, little over 4. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
my comment on that one was you're betting on the New Orleans time being an aberration, and if that's the case, then that's a good
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
If it's not an aberration, if that's the new normal, then we got
Yep.
problems.
I thought he'd been weaker for a little bit, but he is not. So I was wrong. Luis Flores. Do we care enough about Luis Flores to discuss this deal? I
I said especially for a free agent reliever, that's decent
I thought
value.
it was maybe a little
I mean,
high.
it's at the high end, but Flores has been good. This isn't where you're paying $4 million for a 4.5 ERA,
No,
1.4.
it's not egregious. I
pitcher.
should probably just stop being so picky. Steven, do you care about Alan McHugh?
No.
Oh, sorry, you're going to talk about Flores. I like it. I
was just gonna say Flores is a little bit high. He looks like a loogie to me, but that's because I'm picky.
Hey, what are you going to do if OTP follows Major League Baseball and goes to 3-batter minimum?
You know who's screwed with that? Brooklyn.
Oh, I think everybody that leverages their bullpen special, it's going to hurt me. It's not going to hurt me like it's going to hurt Steven. But I don't know, all those rookies, man, they are in trouble. I think you could still get something out of the lefties.
I had one special. I didn't have a loogie last year. True story. I had a right hand. I had a roogie, and that was it.
What do you guys think about?
But also for
sorry, go ahead.
For McHugh, I had my comment earlier about how nobody overpaid backup catchers. I forgot about Alan McHugh. This is an overpay for a backup catcher.
Well, except I think he may be the starter.
He is a 22-year-old. I assume he's going to start him.
I wouldn't start.
I mean, are you
Gabriel Flores?
Are you really going to bring in a 31-year-old to supplant your 22-year-old rookie who, if they're roughly the same ability, which they are, if I remember right, I'm going to start the 22-year-old.
Gabriel Flores has a catcher ability of 3.
I must have missed that.
His hands aren't he's not wearing milk cartons on both hands back there trying to catch the ball, but it's close. I don't know.
Are we talking Rube Baker in Major League 2 bad as catcher?
No, not quite that bad. But I don't know. Steven, thoughts? Alan McHugh? Do you think this guy could actually start?
I mean, I think he can start. Whether he's gonna, is he gonna hit like he hit in Long Beach last year, or is he gonna hit like he hit in Vegas last year? And I don't really like the player option at $4 million for 39, but it's not egregious.
Yeah, I agree. That was my note. There's just a lot of player options in here that, I feel like you give player options when you're competing for players to woo them to take your contract over someone else. I'm not sure that anybody was wooing Alan McHugh. And actually,
no, the only player using that logic, which again, similar to opt-outs, I don't offer player options. I just don't do it. But using that logic, which is fair, the only player who should have warranted a player option was Andre Georges. Because I don't think you were going to get people fighting over Flores or McHugh or Victor Guerra.
Right. That was kind of my thought, too. Okay, but overall, I mean, they addressed their needs pretty well, right? I thought they also might need a top 2 starter. They needed a better defensive shortstop. They've got one that can hit. But, they got a starter that was decent. They got a right field bat. They got bullpen help. I don't know what to expect out of Atlantic City next year. They weren't great last year, but they've got some parts. I just don't know that this gives them enough to really get over the hump, and especially not over Rockville.
I think they'll be better, if only because outside of the juggernaut that is Rockville, the Atlantic isn't great. I mean, Brooklyn blew up their team by design. And Charm City's not good. And who's the other team in there?
Montreal, who's kind of restructuring on the fly.
Montreal, especially with the Lafitte trade, they're clearly going into a rebuild. So I don't see any reason, and this could come back to be hilariously awful for me. I think Atlantic City could finish second place in that division and win over 81 games.
Well, if we have
I don't think by talent level they're that they're not going to contend for a wild card.
If we had an
But I
unbalanced
think the
schedule,
rest
they
of the
might,
division-
right? Like that's the thing. That's one of the if there is an unbalanced schedule, this is the year to try to steal a wild card in the JLA, right? Like, but
Yeah, but also, I mean,
But we
even
don't
if
have
you
that.
look at what's the division, the Ville division, I forget what it's called, the Sun Belt or the
it's
Southeast
the Southeast,
or whatever
it's
it
the Bill
is.
division.
I mean, but those guys, I mean, with the exception of Jacksonville and Huntsville, I mean, those are all 500 and under teams.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Southeast is good, but you know what I mean? It's not, even with the balanced schedule. I put the Atlantic and the Southeast on roughly level footing.
So what you're saying is that the Frick League is a lot stronger than the Johnson right now. If some jerk hadn't blown it in the playoffs, we'd look a lot better. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Well, Rockville's the best team in baseball, as shown by the fact that they've beaten me 8-0 the last 2 years.
I think you just suck at representing the Frick. That's just, you need to let somebody else give it a shot.
Well, you know what, Ted? I'm going to say the same thing I said to Chris Wilson. Beat me and do something
I
about
did
it.
one time. I feel like going to 7 games over and over again is something useful. All right, Brooklyn. We're taking too long to go through teams. At this rate, we will never be finished. Brooklyn, who cares what my notes for Brooklyn, we'll do this really fast, are who cares what their needs are, because they're having an awesome fire sale. It's just Allen's, like, just amazingly entertaining insanity. They didn't sign anyone because they're still over budget.
You mean Wayne Huizenga?
It's not Wayne Huizenga. Wayne Huizenga was a jerk.
No, but I'm talking fire sale wise. This is what this looks like.
Well, maybe, yeah. But this is more fun. That was sad and tragic.
They signed, literally, I looked this up because I was when I was doing this. They acquired 23 players, and not one of them was a free agent.
That's awesome. I like it.
That is incredible.
All right, so Charm City. Charm City needed a lot of things because they are really not a competitive team at the moment. They're still rebuilding. And they got Carlos Garcia, second baseman / outfielder, back, and Jason Morris, reliever, and Luis Soto, starter. And then I don't know if we care about Chris Workman anymore. That makes me a little sad to say, but I don't know.
And I'm assuming you don't care about Ed Kenny.
Again, yeah, I already skipped that. I already forgot that he existed.
All right, Steven, I'll let you go first because I have.
I think I would have liked to see him go a little younger with these signings, and maybe a little more long term. For example, Carlos Garcia. I really like this profile here as somebody that can play all over and hit a little bit. And now, granted, he's 31, but I maybe would have tried to get a couple more years. As it is with the player opt out, it's likely just a 1-year contract. And then you look at Soto, fine pitcher, but 39 is not sure what the plan is.
Well, I think I might know what the plan is, and Ted, you and I have discussed this before, which is why I think you're probably thinking the same thing I am.
Trading these players.
Are these fan interest signings?
What?
Are these fan interest signings?
I think in some way they're fan interest. Like, it's not just like fan interest. You sign the guy and get a bump, but it's also like you keep from being just a little bit more terrible than you were going to be. So a few more fans don't leave, and you don't have to earn those fans back later. But I just wonder if these are all tradable.
Yeah, I mean.
Jason Morris is a good relief arm. $8 million's not too tough.
Jason Morris. I had decent value, but I had questionable fit, but that was an overstatement because why is a bad team signing probably a top 10 closer?
But you can trade him, and this is like $8 million. He can retain part of that deal. The guy might opt out. Same thing with Carlos Garcia. That's extremely. If someone has an injury, that's not a bad player to pick up and plug in.
Carlos Garcia is the outfield version of Dong Soo Chong.
No, he's not. He's a much, much better hitter than Dong Soo Chong. Carlos Garcia, for his career, is almost a league average hitter. He is a league average hitter. 101 weighted runs created plus.
I thought he was worse than that.
Nope. He's just worse at not striking out than that. But he does I think it's just the combination of wheels and just his extremely good eye, and he's got some gap power. So he's like a Dong Suchon plus. Like,
yeah. As for Soto and Workman, it's like meh and why. Like why do you sign Chris Workman? Like I agree with you.
Well, especially
Workman,
with Winston. Like, where is he going to play Workman first? I mean, okay, that's not horrible. Maybe it is a fan interest signing. Maybe that's what it is.
that's the only thing that makes sense for me is he wanted to sell, which is, I mean, to be fair, we've beat people up for not doing this in the past, right. So we can't exactly flip it now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
that's perfectly fine if that's what he's doing. And he'll be a okay first base bat, probably. Okay. It's hard to give Charm City much of a grade because it doesn't really matter what they sign right now. Like, they're so not in a competitive part of their cycle that this is just biding time and finding things to do, and that give the club some value.
I mean, to Brandon's credit, he knows where he's at, and he didn't sign guys the dumb contracts that would hinder the rebuild.
Yeah, and Steven, you mentioned that you thought he might go a little bit younger and longer to try to get some pieces in place. Do you think, who would your targets have been out of this group, I guess, then? Because I didn't really think about that at all. I tend to not.
We don't rebuild, so we don't think like that.
That's not where I was going with this. That might be part of my lack of experience thinking about it. But it's more, I don't like to sign young guys out of free agency. I think they're almost always overpaid.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been, well, obviously, like, what I did was Dong Suchon, Brett Compton, Chris Rios, these guys that are under 30 that you could sign for 4 or 5 years, and maybe they're not, they're not superstars, but they kind of, they're going to be good enough. And if you're, how long is your rebuild really going to take? Is it going to take 2 to 3 years, or is it going to take 6 to 8 years? I think that you sign these guys, and you try to get them for a good number of years at a good value, and in case you have some prospects come through a little quicker than you expect, and you're in contention, year after next, then you're a little more prepared for that.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. Looking at their prospects, they look like they're probably 3 years away, but it's starting to look like they actually had prospects where a couple of years back they had nothing. So there's progress being made. My fear is always that the guys won't be any.
Charm City was one of the ultimate cases of when the window shut, it didn't ease shut, it slammed with full
Somebody
force.
Broke some fingers. My fear with those types of deals, Stephen, is always that the guy won't be any good by the time my prospects get there. But I can see I still think you're making a strong argument. And at the prices that you got your young guys for, I think absolutely it would be the right thing to do. I'm always just fearful that you have to overpay for those guys, and really nobody did this year, which is pretty amazing. And you're right, and those are the sorts of things that adding those pieces in does keep you from being absolutely terrible. And I really wonder if being absolutely terrible from a financial standpoint and what it does to that is worth the high draft, the one high draft pick that you get, or the two. I'm not sure it is, but that'd be an interesting thing to look at.
Well, it depends on what you do with that pick. Like Nashville, when they went, or Nashville they were really batting in at the end of the Halifax years, but they used one of those pretty high draft picks and turned it into Justin Jackson, who just won the Silk and is not looking like he is a franchise cornerstone out there in left field.
But it is one player, right? And if you're bad for a few years, really bad to get multiple picks like that, you basically either have to have really loyal fans that just keep coming, which is doable, or you have to just accept the fact that your fan interest is going to get down around 40 and you're going to have problems making any money and you're going to have to rebuild your revenue structure entirely. And that is so brutal a process to get through sometimes that often you're looking where Nashville is now, where they've got young, cost-controlled Justin Jackson, and they can't. And I think this is the first year where they've been able to have a reasonable payroll without having to spend participation points and do other stuff. They can't add to the parts that are coming out because they don't they're better now, but like a few years back, like they maybe could have competed with some young guys, but they weren't making any money, so they couldn't. You can't compete with a $60 million payroll. It doesn't matter if you've got 3 Justin Jacksons, and that's so I don't know.
Yeah.
Montreal
Signed nobody.
signed to nobody. We just want to stop there. I don't know where Montreal's going. Kevin's kind of, at first I thought he was just more kind of retooling, but some of these more recent deals look more like rebuild, and I don't know that that's a bad idea. The team was already kind of expensive. Montreal was like, when Callahan left, it was set up to be one of those, I'm a master of my craft and I'm interchanging old parts for young parts as we're going and keeping this team competitive. And you have to have a huge familiarity with both the team and with what the previous guy's plan was when you step into that. And it's just kind of gone off the rails. And so some of those like younger parts have gotten more expensive, and they haven't replaced the older parts. None of this is Kevin. This is the people that were in before him. And I think tearing that team apart might actually be the best option, because I don't know how you're going to put in the pitching that team needs. And fix kind of the log jams and offensive spots on the fly. It might be better to just not be horrible, but just kind of somewhere in between total rebuild and retool for a little bit.
So I think especially with the Lafitte trade, that kind of signaled that, okay, maybe this is going to be a full-on rebuild. The issue I have with that is he has some older salaries, but I don't know how many of them he can move and get any sort of decent return.
Oh.
Like Lafitte was the big piece, and I think he got a decent return for him, especially because he's essentially a DH, and he's a very good DH. Don't get me wrong. He's one of the best in the league, but it's tough to get a lot of return on that. And I thought he did. I mean, he didn't steal anything from Dixon, but I thought he got fair value.
Yeah. Well, and he added Hank Brewer, which goes the other direction for maybe not retooling. So I'm not sure where Kevin's going with this. He probably has a plan. I'm sure he does, and it'll be interesting to see that unfold. But I think maybe spending a lot of money in free agency here, and he couldn't have. I mean, he was at $99 million already, or he's at $99 million now. Like it's not like the worst thing in the world that he didn't sign anybody.
No, if you're torn on what to do, sit out free agency. If any new people are listening to this podcast, if you don't know what your long-term plan is, don't spend money in free agency.
Or even if you have a long-term plan, but you don't know what the price points are for players, also don't spend in free agency. You're much more likely to hurt yourself than help yourself. Rockville doesn't need to sign anybody. They're $108.5 million. They didn't spend any money, and they didn't. That's fine. We're done. Done with the JLA. Okay.
So that ends the segment on the Johnson League Atlantic. Randy and Steven will be back with me to discuss the Johnson League Southeastern. I hope you've enjoyed what we've had so far, and thanks for listening.